appreciate the time on a Friday afternoon.
Yeah, of course.
Let me kick out our recorder. Sweet. Well, we have half an hour, so that should be more than enough time to get to know each other. I like to generally kind of start off with sharing a little bit about Data People, giving you a chance to hear kind of firsthand what the company has been about, the journey that we've been on. I'll make sure in doing that, connecting to this role and why we're excited about connecting with you today. And then would love to spend most of the time just getting to know you, your experiences, your journey, as you reflect on that, how that might apply and how that might position you for success here at Data People, but also importantly, where and how that propels you to what you want to be doing in the future.
Okay.
Then we'll save 5 to 10 minutes at the end for any questions that you might have. That sound good?
Yeah, that sounds perfect.
Awesome. So Data People as a company, been around for, I'd say about 8 years, give or take, depends on how you count it. Series A, so smaller company, but one that has seen the hiring cycles. So we focus on recruiting and recruiting excellence, and seeing different hiring cycles and really seeing different influences on hiring over the past 8 years. Especially when you look at maybe the last 5, shift remote, rise of more genuine interest and diversity in DEI hiring, unfortunate sort of dismantling of some of that more recently. Yeah. But we've seen the value of what we do for the market, but we've also experienced ourselves, sorry, I'm gonna put on my headphones, my kids are home, also sort of experience, companies look at this space very differently. They don't all, especially now, they don't all look the same. They don't all shop for the same things. They don't all value the same attributes of what we could bring to them. And so this role is going to help us tremendously in both ideally tightening up the inbound funnel. So we have about 40 MQLs that come in predominantly through paid marketing, but not exclusively, per month, as well as taking advantage of hundreds of intent signals that we have, whether that's from a website visit or a downloadable or a webinar view or anything else. So really excited about having this role really be a catalyst for improving how we fill the pipeline, but also improving how we learn about who we want to be, how do we represent our company in the marketplace holistically. So that is where this role fits in. I'll just, mention Series A, small company, 3-person marketing team, myself, somebody leading demand, even in this role. And so, a lot of collaboration, a lot of sort of support.
Nice.
And yeah, I think that is the end of the pitch. Oh, I guess I've been here for about 10 minutes. So that is kind of where we are. If that spurred any immediate questions, happy to address them now instead of later. But otherwise, we're happy to turn it over to you and hear a little bit more about your journey and your experiences.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I kind of did a little bit of research and had like a high level of just how you guys are pretty much optimizing the hiring process. I saw a lot of really big partners. I think I was looking like DoorDash, I saw Twitch, and just a few other like really big names. And yeah, it definitely sparked my interest, just being that I've got a pretty big background in like staffing, recruiting, and yeah, as you mentioned, like just the last few years, I feel like the recruiting process and the like hiring process definitely needs a revamp. So it was just really interesting to see how you guys have a different take on it, and that's really what interested me in this position.
Awesome. It's good to hear. I'd love to just get a sense of kind of like what you've experienced, whether it's more recently or in the past, like how you've, when you kind of look back at your career and your aspirations, like what are you bringing with you to your next role? What do you think is a strength? Where do you think are some opportunities to learn?
Yeah, definitely. I would say in terms of strength, I've been in sales. Honestly, I kind of say since the age of like 14, 15, I started in sales, being that my dad, he's had a real estate background of like 30 years. And at that like young age, he would kind of get these like distressed properties, foreclosed properties, and I would market them pretty much, put them on Craigslist, Facebook Marketplace, take a few calls here and there, and like he'd throw me $400 or $500, and that's where the love of sales grew. And since then, most recently, I've been with Instawork, which they've been past Series D round of funding, and they're a flexible staffing company, but it's more so on the general labor side. Even though we're reaching out to and we're working with some of the top like warehouses, event centers, stadium centers, hotels, hospitals, restaurants, it definitely still is like more on that kind of entry level front. And I briefly had some experience in the executive like recruitment field, and then as well as like just kind of the mass broad recruitment field with a kind of virtual hiring agency at Wolf University on my resume that I got to be a part of, co-founded, and eventually that was automated. So I would say my strengths really lie in not only like my knowledge of just the recruitment process, the staffing world, but also some really good sales skills, active listening skills, personalization, and also between strategic outreach. But like in real estate, when I was 18, I was a full-time real estate agent. So I also can do like the, 100 plus, 200 plus dial days. But as well with Instawork, being that it's like more in the SaaS startup space, maybe 50 dials, but they're a lot more personalized. So yeah, I would just say in terms of strengths are a lot of sales skills, and probably where I would say I'd be looking to maybe learn and just grow is my experience at startups in the SaaS space. I had some experience at a startup at Decide. I wouldn't say, because I think you guys are around like what, 50 people or so. Decide was maybe in the
Yeah,
like,
we've grown a little bit. We've reduced that a little bit. But yeah, we're sub 50.
okay, yeah, like with Decide, there were like 90, kind of 100-ish employees. So I would say definitely like being in more of a growth, kind of environment is one where I'd be looking to be in and just be able to learn, the intricacies of the startups like at that time period would definitely be fun.
Awesome. And I'd love to hear your pitch for in-store. So when you reach out, in-store, sorry, when you reach out for them on maybe one of those 50 calls, what's your approach to figure out how to personalize those? Then I guess what is your standardized pitch?
Yeah, definitely. So where I usually like to start is social proof. So I found the most success working with my account executive, and I'll just ask them like, hey, can you give me a list or a rundown of like your last 5, 10 deals you've closed? And for example, say, they give me a warehouse, and like Coca-Cola Swire, for example, is one that we kind of work together and close. I will take that warehouse and do like a Google Map search of all the warehouses within 5 miles, and then as well pull them up on Zoom Info. And it would be a simple call to another warehouse, for an example. I would reach out to the general manager and like, hey, John, this is Sharif calling from Instawork. Actually, I was speaking with Mike, general manager over at Swire Coca-Cola. Being that it's summertime, they're facing a lot of burnout just with their employees and turnover. Does that sound familiar? And that gives me a lot of personalization. We're either using social proof. Another instance is I'll reach out to, say I'm looking to speak with the general manager. I'll actually reach out to, maybe one of just the floor managers that's on the warehouse floor, kind of find out like, hey, what is it actually like in terms of turnover? How long, if you needed someone tomorrow, what did it take for you to get them in? And then I'll use that as social proof as well, and kind of multi-thread a few different people of like, hey, John, I actually spoke with Carl on the warehouse floor. He said right now, if he needed someone in, it would take about 21 days. Just wanted to see how you guys are dealing, with that process in the meantime of not having those hands. And yeah, from there, I just try and have an open-ended question, keep it super open to dive in and dig out a little bit of that pain. And from there, I just pitch them on like, hey, if you're saying it's taking you guys 5 hours a week to just sort through applications, interview people, would it make sense? We just spent 15 minutes on the phone. I could show you in the next 24 hours how we can have qualified people ready to work who can lift 50 pounds and won't complain about it. Do you have 10 a.m. or 2 p.m. tomorrow? What works better?
Nice. All right. I like it. where, I guess, in that conversation, so first and foremost, I really appreciate that you highlighted both trying to go to the GM, but sometimes that's not possible, and you might actually need to go, you know, sort of somewhere else first. And I love the idea of getting some intelligence that would be provocative and ideally catalyze some intent behind the leadership. So nice job there. What do you
Thank
do
you.
if you can't find that person, right? So maybe you can't find a contact at a certain business. How do you approach that?
Yeah, so a couple different ways. Depending on the business size, if they're a little bit on the smaller side and like say Zoom Info is only pulling like their CEO or their C-suite, I'll kind of try and go top down and first contact the CEO, like, hey, I know I'm calling out the blue. Can I just steal 30 seconds and explain why I'm calling? If I can get that 30 seconds, I'll let them know, like, look, I know you're not the right person to be reaching out to. I was just hoping you could point me in the right direction. And then that's where the social proof of like, we've been working with X, Y, and Z. Like, if we're calling hotels, we've been working with the Hilton, the Hyatt, and this company. Just wanted to see who would be the best person to reach out to in regards to staffing. So either going top down, and then like those are the best referrals because when you do figure out that person, it's like, hey, the CEO, they kind of directed me your way. Or another option is like if I'm just on the front end and say I'm speaking to a receptionist, I'll usually try and have a name of like, this is the person I'm reaching out to, even if I know they're not currently there, but just to say like, hey, is Mike there in staffing? And it just makes it seem like I kind of have know who I'm talking to or at least knew someone there. And then usually it takes their guard down of like, yeah, I don't know who that is. They're not here, but this would be the best person. Or like, I could transfer you to this person.
Yeah.
But yeah, I try not to avoid asking of like coming in like super salesy, like, hey, I'm calling from InstaWork, want to speak with your HR department. It's usually like, oh, they're busy, click. So definitely like trying to be more personable, a little bit more like friendly tonality, and hopefully I can get pointed in the right direction. Always helps.
Yeah, absolutely. Where do you see yourself going next? Like, what's motivating you? What type of role? But also, let's look 6, 12, 24 months down in the future, which I appreciate is quite difficult to do.
Yeah, I definitely see myself in an account executive role. Uh, Ideally, it would be closer to the enterprise level in the next, I'd say, 1 to 2 years would for sure be my goal. That's really what's motivating me is kind of being able to have not only like a longer sales cycle, but a more complex solution where the relationships I'm building can be a lot more long term. I mean, one thing I've seen with a lot of the kind of roles, and especially with the SDR roles, it's like, you're churn and burn, like you're developing relationships, you set them up on the meeting, but it's like at that point, you don't really continue to talk with them. And then you're just right back at, the starting line of like finding a new person, developing new relationships. So I definitely think something more the like account executive level, and where at least you've got a longer time frame to really build some good connections, a good network, and some longer term like relationships in business.
I like that. Good motivation there. What How typically have you utilized different types of channels? So you just described most cases calling, and maybe that's the channel that you're most comfortable with. But talk to me about your experiences using LinkedIn, email, text. I mean, you're not local in most cases, but showing up and seeing somebody in person. Like
Yeah.
what's been your experience there and your comfort level in doing that?
Yeah, I mean, I'm comfortable with all channels. Definitely, I think calling, especially like if I can get a mobile number, is the best, like most direct way. I've even found like I'll double dial, just being that like a lot of people with iPhones say it's on Do Not Disturb. The second dial, usually you can get through. But yeah, if it's not calling, what I'll do and what I've done at InstaWork is, being that we're looking for that personalization, we actually start the cadence with a personalized email. So we'll go on their LinkedIn, research just their profile, have like a custom subject line, and the first two sentences are pretty custom. And then as well, that's kind of like the cold call opener we work off of. but I've sent Loom videos on LinkedIn. SendSpark is another good platform that kind of helps like automate some of that video outreach on LinkedIn. And then in terms of like in person at Decide, I had the best success at like conferences and tech events in person for sure. So yeah, I mean, I'm definitely comfortable with all different channels. SMS, I've tried text here and there. I know like the kind of texting laws are different everywhere. So like the most I usually will do is, again, like if they're using an iPhone, I'll send a text with their first name like, "Hey John, this is Sharif." And then usually when you call them again, it'll pop up like maybe Sharif or like maybe so and so. So sometimes that makes a little bit of a difference.
Interesting. Like the idea. Um, I don't think I have any more questions at the moment. You were very, very efficient with answering them, so I appreciate that.
Thank you.
What can I help? What can I help you learn? What can I answer for you about data people, role, people, culture, you know, products, customers, anything that's of interest?
Yeah. I mean, I would just say to start, I'd love to learn a little bit more about like one, the kind of timeline you guys have for filling this role. Two, maybe like how many new sales reps are you looking to add? And then I guess the third part of that is like why now? Are you guys looking to expand this and
It's a good question. Timelines as soon as possible. So previously we've had a couple of SDRs, and I'd say admittedly not focused on the right things and not very successful at what they were doing. So we're changing up some of the focus. We're leaning more into more of a traditional BDR style role, so a little bit more inbound focus with landing that, really closing the gap between those who say that they want to connect with us with a high degree of intent, price and demo requests, to actually landing them with an AE and getting ops created, and then moving on to more intense signals, but more thoughtful, more personalized activities. So that's the vision for this role. Right now we have a small AE team, scaled it back because we wanted to provide density for the AEs. Right now, we got, is not unusual with a lot of companies in this economy. We saw tremendous growth in the 2020, 2021, even early parts of 2020, late parts of 2022, and then anticipated that continuing through 2023. That obviously didn't happen. In 2024 has been kind of a up and down year.
Yeah.
And so I think we want to make sure that our AEs and everybody here, quite frankly, has a density to pull from, has a background, a set of experiences that both is giving them the opportunity to succeed, giving them performance incentive opportunities, et cetera, as well as gives them the chance to really learn about the customer segment, the profiles, et cetera. So as far as future AEs, we will need a future mid-market AE. That is without a doubt. And my view is that this individual or sets of individuals are the best candidates for it. You will have, by virtue of, whether it's cold dialing, sending emails, personalizing, you'll know and have the most experience actually reaching out to that type of market. You'll understand who you're speaking to. You'll get a better sense of the product, and you'll have an intimate understanding of their challenges and how our solution can solve for that. So my view would be that would be the most immediate. And when I say mid-market, I'm talking about these are companies sort of 500 to 2,500 employees. So these are not tiny companies by any stretch, but they're not massive companies either. But in theory, they're high. There's a great opportunity for us to continue to penetrate that segment. So that's the, I think, answer them all. Hire quickly, need something better than what our SDRs were doing, and future AE opportunities definitely there.
Okay, nice. I like that. I would ask too, in terms of just like tech stack, software, what are you guys using for like your CRM, as well as like outbound motion and then like internal communication?
Yeah. Tech stack that's relevant. Most of it's HubSpot based. We do have some enrichment through ZoomInfo.
Nice.
6sense is there. Apollo is
I'm super familiar with Apollo.
Sales sequences. Loom is available, as well as Zoom, as you can see, for short form videos and other things. there's probably Dealfront for website visitors. There's probably a few others that I'm thinking that aren't maybe hugely impactful. There's obviously stuff on the product tech stack that I won't go into as far as like understanding what people are using, all that good stuff. But that's the majority of the GTM tech stack. As far as internal communications, we're a Google Shop, as you probably noticed on our email.
Yeah.
Maybe not, I guess we're white labeled, but Google Shop
Cool.
and use Slack.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, that's all familiar with that.
Cool.
Nice. And I would say my next question, just in terms of, I know you kind of mentioned like industries a little bit, but like, are there specific verticals that you guys are seeing a lot of success with, or like that you would be starting this new role in? I know a lot of some of it's inbound, but like, what does that look like just in terms of verticals?
It's a great question. And we were just talking about how do we do this with a bit more focused intent. So I think we've seen some success. The interesting thing about our solution is we've actually seen a pretty broad degree of success across multiple industries. We've seen it with sort of like Conagra is one of our bigger customers. They're a giant. They're a food processing giant in the United States predominantly, but we also have, big technology companies like an Atlassian or an Autodesk. We also have big financial services companies like an Allianz, which is a major holdco for financial services firms. But I think we are finding some good density in a few areas that we want to explore. I can't say that we're necessarily going to create holistic verticalized strategy,
right?
But universities, we have a couple of very strong university partners that we want to continue to evaluate, and we're going to actually start launching some campaigns associated with that. Mid-market bio has been a strong one too, interestingly enough. So like not the Pfizers of the world, but kind of like the next step down of company sizes have been pretty strong as well. Old school tech, so like the Autodesk and the Atlassians that have been around for 30 years, so not the new 10-year-old companies, but the ones that have the Intuits, even the Microsofts, et cetera, potentially continue to be a stronghold. And then there are other sort of qualities of companies that make them interesting to us. So like a Conagra is interesting because they have, and universities to a degree fall under this umbrella as well, is they can't hire remotely. And so they need to be considerate of how are they approaching talent, how are they sourcing talent, but importantly, how are they evaluating their effectiveness in reaching talent and securing their interest. And so there's that component, which doesn't necessarily break down across industries, but is factory based, is geographically limited, like an upper education university, might be medical, might fall under that. So a few others.
Okay, that's super helpful. I would say last question would be just a little bit more about like kind of your experience with Data People, and I know you're kind of closer to like being with them for a year. What would you say maybe have been like some of the biggest lessons you've learned from being at the startup, or like just any advice that you'd give to someone potentially starting?
Yeah, I think overall my experience has been very positive. And I've enjoyed it. So admittedly, this was the smallest company that I've ever joined. Before this, I've been, Series B and up, or much larger than that. And so this is my first Series A, and it's substantially smaller, and it feels that way in some good ways and in some less good ways, but it feels that way as well. And so I think, for where I think I've been successful and where I think I, encourage any candidate and any person here is like, there's a lot to really like about what we do. And it's not just the activities and the actions and learnings, but it's also the outcome. I've worked in industries and for functions that like I can give a shit less about what I'm selling. It just didn't appeal to me. But this is meaningful stuff. This
100% it is.
And you can find different ways of viewing how it's meaningful for each individual. But for me, it's pretty meaningful. The second thing is, I think it's a really interesting time to be in a small startup right now. And it's an interesting time to be in any business, but it's a really interesting time to be in a small startup right now because we're really rebuilding a lot of what we need to continue to invest in. And this role could be a huge contributor to how that gets done, not just filling the pipeline and sales, but it's also, what are we learning? How do we think about structuring those insights in a way that's usable across marketing, across sales, across product? and how do we showcase, how do we put our best foot forward in ways that are, digital and analog, so to speak. So I think that's where, have a voice, have a curiosity, have a high motor, find a way to be sort of driven by what we're trying to do, whether
Right.
it's the challenge, whether it's the outcome, whether it's the product or service, would be sort of the advice that I'd have.
Thank you. Yeah, I like that a lot. I definitely think the outcomes that you can see, like just having a recruiting solution and how you can literally see how it's changing people's lives and affecting people and helping things run smoother, it definitely makes it worthwhile.
Yeah, that's certainly what attracted me, especially being someone who's hired people for a great number, many of years. It's always felt like I've hired lots of great people, but it's always felt like a bit of a crapshoot.
Yeah, the process is.
Lack of understanding of what happens, and it's felt very disconnected. So if we can be helpful in making that feel more connected and better equip companies, people to find other people that they want to work with and that they're best suited for, that to me is really valuable.
Yeah, 100%. I agree too. Well, I guess that would lead me to my last question is just what does the like remaining of the process look like? I mean, I definitely would love to move forward and I'd be super interested to see what the rest of the process looks like.
Yeah, it's gonna be fast. We're excited. We're eager. A lot of what you're going to be doing it can be illuminated through interviews and a little bit of pre-project work type of stuff, but it's also, you're going to have to do some of the learning, some of the investment on the job too. So next step will be, I would love to introduce you to my demand leader, but she will be on vacation next week, so that will not happen. So we're actually next step would probably be to go to the project stage if we get there. So that'll be a short effort, just a few hours, to get a sense of how you work, how you think, showcase a work product. That would also, we'd ask you to spend an hour with our team, give you a chance to engage with somebody on sales, somebody in marketing, somebody in RevOps, more than likely. And from there, maybe one other conversation, but that's about it. So we're looking to move fast and, ensure that we can kind of continue the excitement on both sides, and give us all the opportunity to make a smart decision, but also not drag it out.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense.
Sweet. All right. Well, Sharif, I really appreciate the time. I hope you have a wonderful weekend.
You as well.
And yeah, give me a day or two and we'll be in touch soon.
Okay. Thank you, Brett. Appreciate you, man.
Yeah. Take care.
All right.
Enjoy.
Bye.
See you later. Bye.
Oh, we didn't talk about compensation. That's what I just realized. But I am not saying the number first. So that one was it seemed like a dub. Looks like a lot of these companies are now requiring some type of like 2 to 3 hour project in the interview process. So we're going to see how those are. Shoot, we've got like 8 interviews, I think. 2 today and another 6 more that are coming up. So yeah, keep following along for the process and peace. I'll catch y'all on the next one.